Yeah, hello Tasmanian Tiger fans, my name's Michael Moss, independent searcher researcher on mainland Australia only since 1995. Yes, I've recently, if you have a look at my YouTube videos, gone across all the states of Australia asking them a simple question: are they using environmental DNA? Are they screening also for Tasmanian tiger? And are they using a company called EnviroDNA? Because about 4 or 5 years ago I helped set up a probe, which basically means that people can go and test water, take water samples via this company's filters and send it back to them, and get it processed to see if it matches with Tasmanian tiger. Basically there's Tasmanian tiger DNA in the water. You can do it for soil, but that's not a, it's different obviously. It's not a real-time indicator. Water can be up to, well, who knows, 10 days, 15, depending on variables. Now, this is the Northern Territory who are not screening for Tasmanian tiger. I got a reply earlier today from 2 of their departments. And around Australia, you have your Parks and Wildlife, or Parks Victoria as well, in there. And you also have a separate, each state and territory has a separate, well, this one does and the other states, Canberra doesn't, but they have a separate environment department. Now, along with all the states that are contacted, there's 2 territories in Australia. There's Canberra, which is the capital, or known as the ACT, and there's the Northern Territory. Now, Canberra is part of the Murray-Darling Basin, and that Murray-Darling Basin, the Commonwealth basically paid for the screening. That was screened for, including the Canberra catchment, for Tasmanian tiger twice, basically, or would have been. So that's sort of covered. I'm not aware of alleged Tasmanian tiger sightings in the Canberra catchment, well, yeah, in and around Canberra anyway. Northern Territory, I've stuff all over the last 30 years I've been on this. But as far as alleged Tasmanian tiger sightings go, but it's worth a try. Now, I got a reply today from a Keisha Preston. I have the response in front of me here. I'll just read it out. Hi there, Michael. Please see below replies from Department Senior Officers. The first one is Flora Fauna Division from Department of Lands, Planning, Environment, Northern Territory. The Department of Lands, Planning and Environment has trialled eDNA as a sampling method across multiple projects. Here's a recent example. It's got an email link. Territory Stories, Environmental DNA, eDNA trial, Rapid Creek. In the NT, I'm not aware of any eDNA screening for Tasmanian tiger or any projects with EnviroDNA. Happy for this info to be passed on. Regards, Dr. Peter McDonald, Director, Species Management, Flora and Fauna Division, Department of Lands, Planning and Environment, Northern Territory Government, Tom Hare Building, Arid Zone Research Institute, Alice Springs, Northern Territory. Now that's interesting. Now, Rapid Creek is at Darwin, okay? It's a suburb and a creek as well. So, so that was just a sampling. Okay, it's just a trial. They're not, okay, apart from that, they're basically not doing anything. It's just a trial. So now this second department here is the Parks and Wildlife Operations Division from Department of Tourism and Hospitality. Now this Keisha inquired on my behalf to both of these organisations. Here's the reply from the Parks and Wildlife NT. Your team might be able to assist with this query, Certainly Parks and Wildlife Operations is not yet utilising eDNA, not using the company mentioned or screening for the species in question in this, in this region, it says, sorry, I'll just get back to that, in this region. And that was from just having a look here, having a few problems with the iPad and I'm reading this off. That was from a Ian Angus, District Manager, Savannah Golf Parks, Department of Tourism Hospitality, Parks and Wildlife Division, Catherine. And Keisha gets back to me. I hope this helps in answering your query. Many thanks. Keisha Preston, Admin Officer, Savannah Golf Region, Parks and Wildlife Division, Department of Tourism and Hospitality, Northern Territory Government, Joel Street, Catherine NT. And here's the insignia there of the Northern Territory. Northern Territory, huge area, unlike the other territory in Australia, Canberra. This is a huge area. It's central Australia, right up the middle of Australia, if you like, right up to the top coast where Darwin is based. Alice Springs is down south, if you like. Probably you might have heard of Ayers Rock, so it's in that catchment down there. So yes, so that's interesting. So they basically trialled it, but they're not screening using it, and they're certainly not with Tasmanian tiger. But that doesn't mean that Tasmanian tiger hasn't been screened up there for, because EnviroDNA, it would only be a very small area. They went up there and trained at least one Aboriginal group, according to their website. And that was a few years ago. And they took samples there and showed them how to do it. And that would have been processed, I believe, by EnviroDNA. And Tasmanian tiger would have been on the list. And the Commonwealth Government would have sponsored that. And they are very open. They've been sponsoring screening environmental DNA for Tasmanian tiger on species lists called metabarcoding. You can see my videos on the Murray-Darling Basin and also the Burnett-Mary region in Queensland. Now, and so that's probably there's only a very small area. I don't know where it was in the NT, but it'd be only a very small sample anyway. But the Commonwealth is involved with environmental DNA up there, and with the Gouldy and Finch. Now, this department, Commonwealth, federal government, it's called Resilient Landscapes National Environmental Science Program. Some beautiful birds, fairly rare these birds, the Gouldy and Finches. And basically there's an article here, just very briefly, finding finches using eDNA to track endangered birds. And so basically it says, one of the great conundrums of conservation management, often the animal species of most concern are the most difficult and time-consuming to find. Well, tell me about that. Thylacine. Some of these species are rare. Well, Tassie tiger probably is. Well, is. While others are cryptic. Well, Tassie tiger ticks that box as well. Hiding high in a canopy. Well, they don't do that. And if they did, I'd give up. Or deep in their burrows. That's another thing. I'd give up if they were doing that. Some are highly mobile, never staying in one place for too long. That's probably your thylacine, apart from females that are breeding. Others avoid the traps traditionally used by scientists to monitor animal populations. Well, wild experts, Tasmanian tiger on that. Okay. Now, I'll just scroll down here. I'll just do a little bit here. There's another picture of the beautiful birds there. And research funded by the Australian Government National Environmental Science Program has developed a potentially breakthrough tool for one species, the Gouldy and Finch. Water collected from the small pools where they cluster to drink. It's the first time the eDNA test has been successfully used to detect the threatened bird species. So there's a first with environmental DNA for you there. That was a few years ago now. So that was... They're not necessarily using this in Northern Territory government, by the way. That's just setting it up. They created a probe for this in conjunction with the Townsville, with the university there in Townsville, James Cook Uni. Now, EnviroDNA did that with me, created a probe for the Tasmanian tiger. And the reason you create them is so basically you can find them. They're on the screen, on the species list when you screen using water. And you can compare the DNA, what they've got, with what you're picking up in the water. So so that's that. But also they've been a bit busy here because the federal government, because once again another section here, Resilient Landscapes National Environmental Science Program. There's another little article here. It says monitoring the endangered, the invasive, and the ugly with eDNA, which is just a short version of environmental DNA. It says here, aquatic field surveys in northern Australia are expensive, difficult and often dangerous, especially when saltwater crocodiles are present. Well, that's one thing you don't have down south. You don't have to worry you get munched on by crocodiles for their lunch. Okay. Now what they did here is, but new environmental eDNA approaches being investigated, this is just being investigated by a team of hub researchers led by James Cook University Professor Damien Burrows, means that detecting aquatic species is as simple as collecting water in a bottle. Together with project partners at the Northern Territory and Queensland governments, the team has developed eDNA sampling analysis techniques for a suite of species, okay, of conservation or management importance in the streams and lakes of northern Australia, including endangered rainforest frogs, the invasive aquatic plant Kubumba, 2 species of tilapia and cane toads. But they're not using it. There's no point setting these things up. In the Northern Territory, it's just basically admitted they're not using this stuff. So this is a few years old as well. They've developed a new method that allows water samples to be collected and preserved rather than filtered, and are using a novel preservative solution that does not need refrigeration even under the high temperatures of the tropics. Samples treated with the preservative are able to be stored before analysis. So that's good because you've got long distances up there, so that's another way to preserve your DNA in there. The project team have also received samples collected by the Annindigua landed sea rangers at NT's Groote Island, which is Groote Eylandt, which I think is an island there, which will be screened for the presence of large-toothed sawfish. So that's another species there, eDNA. And that's the researchers involved. But once again, they've set, this is all they did. They set it all up. But as you've just seen, with what I've just explained to you there, with the replies, they're not using the technology. It's crazy. And by the way, EnviroDNA in Melbourne have all these species on the screenings list. And you've got states like Tasmania and South Australia and the Northern Territory here that are doing nothing. Not even using the technology, let alone screen for Tasmanian tiger. I mean, they're the Luddite. I call them the Luddites. They're just stuck in the 20th century. But yes, so that's the Northern Territory covered. They're not screening for Tasmanian tiger. Okay, unfortunately, they're not screening for anything. That's for the Parks and Wildlife and the Conservation Department, from Alice Springs to Darwin, or to Katherine, which is near Darwin there, up the top there. So yes, I thank you for your interest. Oh, one other thing, EnviroDNA with Greening Australia, just put on their website earlier today, I noticed that they, a place called Omeo, they did an aquatic survey for accounting for nature there on a 100 acre or hectare block. And so that might have been screened for Tasmanian tiger. Mind you, that's under the Murray-Darling anyway, so that might have been screened already. But there's a possibility, because they were using EnviroDNA for the, because they were looking for mammals there as well as aquatic, well, anything there. Basically, they were testing the waters. So that property there may have been screened for Tasmanian tiger. That's in Great Dividing Range there, Omeo, sort of top end of Gippsland heading north. So thank you very much.